Throughout most of the 10th and the early 9th century BCE, Jerusalem was a hilly stronghold blocked by the desert fringe on its eastern flank, bordering the political and economic systems thriving to its north, the Kingdom of Israel, to its west, the Philistine cities, and to its south, this desert polity with a center in Tel Masos. The poor material culture in Jerusalem and its surroundings, together with the slow, gradual development of the economic activity in the rural hinterland, reflects its seclusion and its inferior status in southern Canaan. However, in a small and gradual process during the first half of the 9th century BCE, Judah started to develop as a kingdom, to fortify its borders and develop a more mature administration and economy. With the collapse of the economic political systems to its west and to the south of Jerusalem in the second half of the 9th century BCE, the Judahite kings expand their sovereignty into these regions. It is during this period that the first indication of an administrative system and the adoption of an alphabetical script appear, in the form of bulle used to seal documents. Concurrently, luxury items show the first indication of trade with the western coast and to some extent social stratification in Jerusalem. For example, thousands of fish bones were discovered in a stratum from this period in the city of David. It means that people in Jerusalem had the money and the means to buy fish. Some of them came from the Nile, some of them came from the Mediterranean Sea. Someone brought these fish to Jerusalem. During the second half of the 8th century BCE, there is a quick ripening process of Judah's administration and economy, which set Judah as a well-developed kingdom for many different aspects. Assuming that Judah became an Assyrian vassal kingdom during the years of King Ahaz, at the beginning of the last quarter of the 8th century BCE, the question is how much these developments are part of the natural, local development of Judah, and how much it is part of the Assyrian rule, demand, and direct or indirect influence. In some aspects, no clear answer can be given to this question. From the archaeological point of view, many of the finds can't be dated more precisely, and some of the changes can be seen as a natural process of development. The amount of changes, however, and the quick turn of Judah to a well-developed agricultural entity are, in my opinion, a clear sign to the impact of the Assyrian rule over the local developments in Judah. At the end of the 8th century BCE, a significant change occurred in all aspects of the ceramic culture in Judah, which evolved from an unstandardized small-scale production in local workshops to a standardized mass industry with a broad range of distribution and a limited variety of shapes, and the use of larger storage jars than had previously been used. All the above point to a centralized royal economy, which improved agricultural production and its mobility under the guidance of a central authority. The best example to this change can be found in a study of the local production of storage jars and the change in this production in the late 8th century BCE. The typical oval storage jars in Judah, known also as the Lamelech jar or the Royal Judahite jar, is a well-known find. New study of these jars, including computer-generated typology of large sample of these oval jars, demonstrated that there are three main chronological stages in the development and use of oval storage jars that were produced in the lowland. In the first stage, dated to the late 9th and the early 8th century BCE, when the lowland was still outside of any direct rule of Judah, the oval storage jars were characterized mainly by the manufacturing of non-standardized subtypes. These jars appeared mainly in the lowland, also in large numbers in sight, that were not included inside the borders of Judah, like Tel Etzafi, which is biblical Gat, and Gezer. In the second stage, dated to the early mid-8th century BCE, under the rule of Judah, and probably as part of its developing administration and economy, the standardized jars became more common, than the non-standardized jars. And in the third stage, dated to the late 8th century BCE, when Judah was already under Assyrian rule, one type of the jars was adopted for use by the royal administrative system of Judah, as can be demonstrated by the appearance of stamp impressions on handles of jars from this type. The gradual standardization of the jars in the mid-8th century BCE indicates a more centralized production and consumption than should be associated with the consolidation of the Judahite political, economical, and administrative systems. However, the next phase in the history of these jars during the late 8th century BCE is its adaptation into the royal administrative system, which expanded their distribution and brought them to all the different geographic regions of the Kingdom of Judah. All jars continued to be manufactured in the same place, and this one main production center, probably Tel Soho in the Elah Valley, became integrated into the royal administrative system, connected with the stamped jar handles, which dictated their main function until the destruction of Judah in the early 6th century BCE. As Ido Koch will describe in one of the next parts of this course, under Assyrian rule, the Judahite tradition of stamping or incising jar handles began with the early Lamelech stamp impression at the end of the 8th century BCE, was followed by the late Lamelech stamp impression in the early 7th century, the incised concentric circle in the mid-7th century, and the rosette stamp impression at the end of the 7th and the early 6th century BCE. The continuity in the manufacturing of royal storage jars and the use of royal emblem stamps on the handles indicate that the different stamps are all part of the same administrative system that probably had the same function from about 140 years, from the late 8th century to the early 6th century BCE. The same administrative system continued after 586 BCE, when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, for an additional 450 years during the Babylonian period, and then we know about the Moza and the lion stamped handles. During the Persian and early Hellenistic period, and then we have the early and middle type of the Yehud stamped handles, and until the late Hellenistic period, when we know the late Yehud stamp impression and the Yerushalayim stamp impression. Throughout these 600 years, Judah, and then Yehud and Judea, was a land under direct rule of great empires. The stamped jar handles should be understood as part of the administrative system that had already been established when Judah became an Assyrian vassal kingdom, and continued in use as long as Judah was vassal kingdom, and continued to be used later when it became a province under the hegemony of the Babylonian, Persian, Ptolemaic, and Seleucid empires. More changes occurred in Judah's economy and administration when it became an Assyrian vassal kingdom, like the rise of agricultural and royal estates, together with a dramatic increase in the number of farms, small villages, and agricultural installations around Jerusalem. These developments can be explained as resulting from the demand for more agricultural products, and can also explain technological changes in the agricultural production installations that occurred in Judah at the end of the 8th century BCE. These developments should be explained and understood together with the new weight system that was part of Judah's entrance to the imperial sphere of economy and trade. Weights are indication for mature and standardized economy, and the fact that this part of the economy and administration appear only in this stage is a clear indication to the change that took place under Assyrian rule. According to this approach, many of the changes occurred after Judah became an Assyrian vassal kingdom and had to pay tribute and taxes, and get it mainly by producing wine, oil, and grain. All this should be connected to Ramat Rachel, that was initially founded as a Judean administrative center under the supervision and guidance of imperial rule. In the next unit of this course, we will introduce the first phase of this amazing site and its importance for our understanding the history of Judah under Assyrian rule.